Hey everybody, it's Mr. Wagstaff. Cool stuff to talk about today. Alright, so we're going to start out talking about some unions and some labor problems. Then we're going to start talking about how America wants to prevent future conflicts. So America is actually kind of unique in the fact that before it was a cool thing to do like it is present day, we actively try to prevent war while there is not a war. So now we kind of do that to manipulate things for our own benefits. Shocker. But America does, during peacetime, try to keep peace going for the future. And we're going to talk about some of those things today. But first, let's talk about some issues that are happening immediately after World War I with labor and strikes and how that worked out. So let me make myself smaller and put myself up here in the corner. So we've been talking about unions here a little bit in the last couple units. Let's talk about the weapon that unions have, which is the ability to go on strike, which means they're not going to work until their demands are met. They historically don't go well for the unions. They're going to figure it out, and we're going to talk about John L. Lewis and how he is able to kind of set the standard for how this is going to take place. But let's talk about some of the unions and some of the strikes that happened and how they just are absolutely not effective at this time period. So the first one that we're going to talk about is going to be with the Boston Police Department. But one thing that all these unions have in common, right, is the fact that they are attacked by the rich people. So the owners really do not like unions. Unions are bad for owners and they're bad for the leaders of business. So what do? The owners don't want unions to be created because unions take money from the rich people, which is the owners. So to try to prevent unions from forming to begin with, owners kind of take the politics at the time and try to accuse people who join a union as being communist. If you think about it, right, here's our argument. It's a group of people who all want to have collective bargaining, meaning they all want to be treated the same. They all want collective, means a union. They all want a substantial increase in pay or better working conditions, universal across the board. They all want the same thing. They all want to be common. Communism? So basically anything in which a group of people want the same thing is then negatively referred to as communism at the time. As we have talked about, being accused of being a communist is like the most intense and brutal accusation you can throw at somebody at this time. So owners tried to claim if you wanted to join a union, you were a communist. All right? They know that's not true, but nobody wants to be labeled a communist at the time. There's a sign here that says, "So, you are a communist." This is from the Heinz Corporation, which makes Heinz ketchup. They're joining a union here in this company. And so when you finally, like, all right, like if you're a worker, like, I'm going to be I guess I join a union, you know, and you join the union, and then like the first meeting, they're like, "Oh, so you're a communist." They're joking about this. They're saying, like, you joined this, and one of the big reasons that you didn't want to join is because you're a communist. But now you're here, I guess you're a communist. And they're saying in this handout, like, if you're a communist, then they're a communist. These other people are communists because they're all doing things the same way to try to stop unions. That's also communist. Like, if you're a communist, so is everybody else is a communist, which is not true. So it's kind of tongue in cheek here. They're like saying, don't be concerned with people calling you a communist. We know you're not. A union is not communist. So unions grow in large part because after World War I, the progressive era basically grounded to a halt. All these improvements that have been happening with Roosevelt and things like that really stopped after World War I, but there's a lot of workers who want to continue the better working conditions and higher pay and the things that people are pushing forward. So there's going to be tension between unions and the companies. So let's talk about some of the strikes and how they didn't necessarily work out. The first group we're going to talk about is going to be the Boston Police Department. So the Boston Police Department is kind of unique because it's not really a company. It's it's a utility. It's paid for with taxpayer money. Well, the police have not gotten a pay raise in a long time at this point, right after World War One. So the police have joined a union, and they are saying that we are going to go on strike if you don't pay us more. Well, there was no money in Boston to pay them, or whatever the reason was. And so the police go on strike and they walk out of work. How do you think this works out when all your police are like, we don't work no more? Probably, I'm going to see if this is, so probably how you expect it to work out. This is the newspaper the next day that mobs smash windows, loot stores. Wild night follows the strike of the police. So yeah, this is not a thing that can happen. The police just can't go on strike because everything else shuts down. So what happens is there's a lot of World War I soldiers who are out of work. They're coming back and they're trying to find jobs. So they just hire a whole bunch of World War I soldiers to come be the police. Because, they're 20 years old, 20, 25, in between that age. To come be the police in Boston and fill all these jobs by all the police that went on strike. The president at the time, Calvin Coolidge, gets involved here. And you'll notice that there has to be some government involvement here. That laissez-faire doesn't work well with strikes either. The president at the time is Calvin Coolidge. Calvin Coolidge takes a relatively unprecedented step at the time, and he bars the police from returning. He says, no, all of you guys who just went on strike, knowing what would happen, like you knew it would put the safety of the public at risk by going on strike, you are no longer allowed to be police officers. So even if you're like, okay, our bad, we're coming back, anybody that went on strike is not allowed to be a police officer anymore. And this is a very, very big time step by the federal government. Now, the federal government can't do this in most cases because it's private companies. But since the police are a taxpayer funded organization, even if it's at the state or municipal level, it does allow the government all the way up to the federal government some belief that they have the right to get involved and make that determination. So police going on strike is not effective. Police still have unions, and they're very strong. Police, though, don't go on strike like this, and they've learned from this. So if police want to go on strike, they don't stop patrolling streets. They just stop filling out paperwork. They're still there. If there's, a crime or something that they need to go arrest bad guys, that's fine. But as far as giving speeding tickets and things like that, like they may still pull you over and give you a stern talking to, but then they don't fill out the paperwork, or they fill it out and it just clogs up the court system. And there's a lot more, logistics involved in, a police strike than just stopping working. But just the police after this, that can't be a thing. Oh, well, that's not what I wanted to do. All right, the next one is a steel mill. Now, this one actually happened before World War One, and there's a couple really cool instances of steel strikes. The Homestead strike itself is a really cool story, but this is across the entire industry, not at one factory, in which steel workers went on strike. All right, so the steel company, the steel industry goes on strike. This is pretty. This one did happen right after World War I. This is huge because everybody needs steel, as we had talked about. It is very, very, very tough on the economy when the steel workers go on strike. So when they go on strike and they're demanding all these things, here's the problem with the steel union here, and this is how the free market helps equality. So they just fired all the steel workers. Now, you're like, wait a minute. If they all went on strike, how'd they fire them all? Who'd they get to replace them? Well, they fired all the workers that went on strike because the only people who could work in the steel industry were in the union because that's the organization that they had. Well, the steel industry, the steel union, did not allow black people in their union. So there were no black people in the steel industry because you had to be in the union in order to get hired into the steel industry. When they all went on strike, the owners realized they could just fire them all, get rid of the union. So they fired all their workers, got rid of the union, and then just hired African Americans. Because, hey, there's this massive workforce that's out here willing to work and do this brutal work. And y'all wouldn't let them in your union, so welcome. Because of that, after the steel mill workers realized they all got fired and they got replaced by black people, that, hey, maybe being racist in who gets to join your union probably isn't effective. You should probably let everybody join. Otherwise, this is going to happen every time. So the steel workers went on strike, but because they were racist in their union policies, it set them up to completely lose their jobs, and the owners just hired other people. So that's what happened in the steel company. They realized that's not effective. It was huge news. The big steel strike starts, and so the steel industry is considered a failure. They get nothing. And so this is like the union being like, go back to work. Notice that it says go back to work. And you're like, what's all this gibberish? That's in different languages, all right? Because a lot of immigrants that come to America don't speak English. And so a lot of the immigrants are willing to come over here and do this very tough manual labor like working in the steel industry. So when the union sends out a memo, they have to do it in a whole bunch of different languages. And you can see the different languages here. But they're like, go back to work. Like the strike was not effective. All right. So let's get to the one that does work. All right. And this sets the standard for how strikes are supposed to be done. So the coal industry, all right, the coal miners hadn't gotten paid in quite a while, all right, or have really rough working conditions. They're working too long of days. That's their big problem, all right. So when you're working like 12-hour days in the mines, which is very dangerous, by the time you're at hour 9, 10, 11, you're so exhausted, that's when bad things happen. People are getting killed down in the mines because they're so exhausted. So the mine workers are like, hey, we need shorter working hours so that we don't die and make dumb decisions when we're exhausted at the end of a 12-hour shift. And the coal owners are like, nah, you don't need that. And they're like, yeah, we do. So a strike ends up happening. But here's why the coal strike is effective. First off, they have a leader, a clear-cut leader, a guy named John L. Lewis. All right. So I'm going to show you a picture of him. I want to talk about this right here. So the coal strike, one of the smartest things that they did, led by John L. Lewis, all right, is he knew in the wintertime that they needed these things changed. He gives his owners, because he's the head of the union, a time in advance to fix it. It's like, hey, we need better pay and we need to work less hours. And the owners are like, no. And he's like, look, I know it's December right now. It's in the middle of the winter. So we're not going to go on strike right now because the whole the whole country needs our coal. If we go on strike now, we're public enemy. All right. And we would shut down the country and people would freeze to death. That's bad. So come March 1st, if you have not met our demands, we're going to go on strike. They're like, whatever. So they just ignore them. But looking back on it, this is very helpful. He told them in advance what they wanted and when they needed it by. It didn't catch anybody off guard. So come March 1st, nothing had happened. They go on strike. That is important because coal heats people's houses. As the temperature gets warmer, they don't have to have coal to survive. You need it for industry, but you don't need it to survive during the summertime. So they go on strike. Here's some other stuff that John L. Lewis does in his strike. All the workers still show up at work every day. They don't work, but they show up, their lunch pail, all their stuff, ready to work. Other strikes where you just go home when they tell us that they're going to give us what we want, we can come back to work. He wants them to realize that the owners, that they're here ready to work. At any given moment, when you give in to our demands, we're going to walk right back into these mines and work. All right. So it's like a show of good faith. So throughout the summer, this is Uncle Sam here. This is kind of at the end. I should put this picture at the end. But Uncle Sam is shackled here by this coal strike, right? Which is America, because America needs coal, and the coal strikers are on strike. 147,000 coal miners go on strike. This is John L. Lewis. There's a biography of him. All the other pictures of him, he's like a really old, like politician guy. But this is a photograph of John L. Lewis. He was a mine worker. After this, he is going to become just the head of the union. What he does is he keeps communication open with his bosses. He doesn't draw a line in the sand. It becomes so intense that the United States government has to get involved. They're called arbitrators. All right. So it's actually Roosevelt when this happened. This one actually happened before World War One. But because coal is so pivotal to society, the government is going to come in and be an arbitrator. This is a standard in very important industries from now on. An arbitrator does not decide who is right and wrong. The United States government shows up, somebody gets sent in here to make sure both sides communicate with each other every single day. Now, they can just cuss at each other all they want. That's fine. But the arbitrator, the worst thing that can happen is a lack of communication. If they don't communicate, nothing can improve, nothing can change, and the strike can't end. The strike carries throughout the summer. It starts into the fall, and and eventually, because the United States government does come in and become an arbitrator and made the owners and John L. Lewis and his union talk, they come up with this compromise that they are going to get shorter working hours and they are going to get better pay. And the coal strike ends, and that's what this picture is in the newspaper, that all the coal workers go back to work, and thanks to John L. Lewis and his work of constantly keeping communication open, which is something the other unions didn't. They just said, you contact us when you give us what we want. John L. Lewis constantly kept communication open. He constantly told his men to show up to be ready to work at first chance. Because of this, and with the United States government's getting involved with this thing called an arbitration, just somebody that makes sure that they talk, the success of the coal strike is something that people will look at for years to come when you go on strike, that, hey, this is how you do a strike. All right. Switching gears here. So, we're talking about the Navy. Like, completely different, like, just a complete opposite conversation now than when we talk about with unions. So, this is interesting. All right. So, we'll just get here where it says the ratio. After World War One, one of the reasons that World War One was created is because of militarism. Everybody just building up their Navy, or their military in general, bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. After World War One, all right, America has this most dominant navy, the Great White Fleet. Well, when we created this huge navy, the biggest navy on earth, we noticed England started creating a big navy. France started creating a big navy. These are our allies, but they also don't want America to be like this big. So when England and France start creating a huge navy, Italy starts creating a huge navy, and then we see Japan. Japan over in the Pacific starts creating a massive navy as well. And we're like, oh, we see where this is going. Everybody creates a huge military, and then crazy stuff happens. Because you create something big, shiny, that goes boom, like a military, you want to use it. You spent billions of dollars on it. You want to use it. America knows this. We've learned this from World War One, that militarism, just massive increasing of the military, leads to war. If you spend a bunch of money on the military, you want to blow something up. So America sees this. As we create a big navy, everybody else is. So we're like, okay, we need to get together and talk about this. So we have a huge meeting, all right, in Washington. It's called the Washington Naval Conference. And we bring in all the big boys to talk about it. Now, it's England. It's America, obviously, because we're America. England, which, another big player. France, not surprising. Italy, they were on our side in World War I. We bring them in. And then a new one with Japan. We're going to bring Japan in. This is the first time Japan gets to be at the big boy table, and they're like, ooh, awesome. Because Japan really wants nothing more than to be our friend. All right. Japan has ideas of maybe, taking over Asia and stuff like that. But with America, Japan just wants to be our friend. And they have tried so hard to be our friend, but we just won't be their friend. And it's probably racially motivated. We're like, they're not white, so I don't know what the illogical logic is of a logical racist. But if Japan was a white country, I'm sure us in Japan would have been BFFs. But Japan desperately wants to be friends with us, and we just kind of push them off to the side. All right. But we invite them here because we see they're getting a big navy. And they're becoming a very modern country. So Japan's like, yay, I get to go to, see my friends. So Japan shows up. So here's what the deal is, all right? So when we get here, America says, hey, here's what we need to do. We need to come up with a ratio that we all remain part of so that militarism doesn't become a thing and we don't just keep making bigger and bigger and bigger militaries until we all just want to murder each other. So what we need to do is we need to come up with a ratio first, and then we need to assign each country a part of that ratio. All right. So I'll explain what that to you what that means here. All right. The ratio is going to end up being 5, 5, 3, 2, 2. Here's what that means. All right. Each country is going to be assigned one of these numbers. All right. And you have to remain in ratio with the rest of the countries. So say America gets a 5. All right. If we have 5 battleships, all right, and France gets assigned a 3, that means if we have 5 battleships, France can have 3. If we have 10 battleships, France can have 6 because it's doubled, but they have to remain in that ratio. All right? A little bit of math there for you. So each country is going to get assigned a number in this ratio. Now, obviously, everybody wants the 5. All right? And everybody's like, oh, I must have the 5. Everybody wants the 5. But there's only 2 5s to give away here. All right? So let's talk about who gets what. The first country that gets a 5, not surprising, is America. Now, why does America get a 5? Because we're America. That's why, because we showed up and beat everybody in World War I. Woo, America. Yeah, that's not why. You have to use logic. You have to convince the other countries. Why does America need the biggest navy? Because if you have a 5, there's nobody that's going to have a bigger navy than you. So we had to use logic on why we needed a bigger navy. And here is our logic on why America gets a 5. If you look at its map, this is America right here. All right. The reason is because we have 2 coastlines. This coastline here and this coastline here. And even though there is the Panama Canal down here now, it is hard to get from one side to the other quickly, like within a day or so. So we needed to defend both of our coastlines, and we also have 2 oceans that we need to defend. So because of that, they agree that America gets one of the 5s. So moving on, who gets the next 5? It's England. England gets the other 5, and here's why. This is England, called the United Kingdom. England for this class, England and United Kingdom, same thing. They're interchangeable for this class. So this is England. All right. It's an island. They're like, yeah, we just want a big navy. We don't even need an army. Just give us a navy because we are an island. 100% of our defenses come from being an island. So let us defend ourselves with a big navy. So everybody agrees with that. So England gets the other 5. So then the 3 goes to France. All right. And here's why. France, all right, if you see it here, France does have coastline, and quite a bit of coastline, and they're right next to England. So even though they also are going to have an army and all that, because they're so close to England, and England's going to have such a big navy, they're going to let France have a pretty decent sized navy. All right. So then it comes down to the last 2, the people who have the small navies. Italy gets a 2. Now, Italy, if you look at Italy here, Italy is completely surrounded by water. All right. So Italy's completely surrounded by water, or not completely, but mostly. And they're cool. They need a bigger navy. No, they don't. If they're just trying to defend themselves, which is the whole point here, to defend yourself, not attack somebody, defend yourself. Look at this entrance into the Mediterranean Sea. You can put like 1 boat there and defend your entire country. They got to make it through here first. So because of that, Italy doesn't need a huge navy. And also the fact that France has a 3 and Italy has a 2, that equals 5. No math expert, but that's 5. That would equal England. So if England tried to be squirrely in Europe, they would also, France and England could team up against England if England tried to get squirrely and would make it fair. So the last 2, Japan. Japan's like, wait, what? Here's why Japan's pretty salty about this 2 they get. This is Japan right here. They are an island. just like England, surrounded by a bunch of people that don't like them. All right. There is really no reason why Japan should get a 2 here, except for the fact that it's like racially motivated. America's like, oh, can't have Japan have a big army. They'll just, or have a big navy. They'll just hurt themselves. And Japan's like, what the crap? Like that's awful. So Japan is not happy at all with this treaty. So this is supposed to be, I guess, the treaty. This is America, and like America's happy, England's happy, France is happy. I guess this is, I guess Italy back here is happy, France is happy. They actually have their names on it. Japan, they're like looking at it like, what? Like, this is kind of bullcrap. But Japan wanting to be at the big kid table is cool with it. Because they just built a brand new fleet. The goal here is to not build any more ships for 10 years. So everybody agrees that nobody's going to build more ships. Japan just got, so every ship Japan has is brand new. And they're like, okay, I'm in ratio right now. As long as I don't build anymore, we will sign it. I think this is a jerk move on America's part, and these other guys. But hey, I'm just happy to be here at the big kid table. Well, here's what America does to kind of be a jerk. All right. So half of our Navy is really brand new. Like, we just got it, like in like World War I, Great White Fleet. The other half of our Navy is about 20 years old at this point, and it's kind of garbage. It's kind of useless. So America, with our ratio of 5 and this big old Navy, we take half of our Navy, all our old Navy out, and we destroy it. This is a picture of America destroying some of our older Navy ships and disassembling it and taking the pieces out of it. We take half of our Navy and destroy it. Well, guess what England has to do to stay in ratio? They have to destroy half their Navy. And they do. Guess what France has to do to stay in ratio? They have to take half their Navy and destroy it as well. Guess what Italy has to do? Take half their Navy and destroy it? Absolutely. They all do it. And then everybody looks at Japan. Japan just built this Navy. All right? They don't have old ships to go destroy to stay in ratio. And Japan's like, nah, man. Nah, that's some bull crap. And Japan gives us the big middle finger. And they're like, nope, not going to do that. And Japan goes, and not only do they leave the Washington Naval Conference after this, they're going to start mass producing a Navy. The rest of the world says, we're not going to build a Navy, any more warships for 10 years. Japan is mass producing them. The same reason that we gave them a 2, because we didn't think that they mattered, is the same reason this doesn't set off alarms for us. They're going to create the largest Navy that Earth has ever seen, which is going to lead to World War II and Pearl Harbor. We just ignore them because we're like, they're Asian. What are they going to do? Like, we completely discount them because they're racist. So, Japan is brought into the Washington Naval Conference, but then just because of the jerk move of us destroying our Navy afterwards, they back out and go and do the opposite. Doesn't set off our spidey sense, again, because we just didn't think that they could be a threat. This is John Evans Hughes, the senator and the admiral that came up with the idea of the ratio and to do this. So this is an attempt to keep people from building a huge military, and for the most part, it works. But with Japan and the way we treated them, they were not happy with it. So one more thing, and this is ridiculous to me. So did you know that we outlawed war in the 1920s? That's right. This dude named Kellogg and this dude named Briand came up with a document that said, war is illegal. My country will never go to war again. And they're going to see how many countries on earth that they can get to sign this. All right. I don't know if they're going to get drug tested after this or not, but this seems like how you come up, hey, got an idea for world peace. And they're like, what? Let me show you a picture of these. These are the two extremely sober guys, I imagine, when they came up with it. It's like, hey, you know how you stop war? How, buddy? Hit me. What if we just got everybody sign a document, say, my country won't ever go to war again. Oh my gosh, I think you figured it out. World peace. So these two good dudes, Kellogg and Briand, created a document called the Kellogg-Briand Pact, in which it says anybody who signs this document has said war is illegal and my country will never go to war again. Guess how many countries signed this? Every single country on Earth signs it. I mean, this is the first group of old dead white guys that sign it. Yeah. So, like, America renounces war as a policy. Everybody on Earth signs this document, says, we'll never go to war again. It is illegal. What? Yeah, so the reason this is a thing, all right, is since nobody is at war, what jerk is going to be like, nope, plan on killing that guy tomorrow, so not going to sign it. Of course everybody's going to sign it. You look like a jerk if you don't sign it. However, guess what your punishment is if you, like, break the Kellogg-Briand Pact? There isn't any. It's like, you know what? I'm never going to kill people again. Okay, and everybody signs it. But because there's no teeth to this, there's nothing holding you accountable. Like, there's no punishment, there's no sanctions, there's no embargoes, there's no nothing like that. Is if you break it, why not sign it and not look like a jerk? Because, spoiler alert, war does not end after World War I. That's why it's called World War I, and not the World War. So the Kellogg-Briand Pact was a failure because it had no teeth and there's no way to enforce it. But it is an attempt, just like the Washington Naval Conference, for America to continue peace during peacetime. A lot of countries just want to look for peace at the end of war. America constantly looks for continued peace during a time of peace, even if it is a lot of times manipulated, like the Washington Naval Conference, for our own gain. All right, that's as far as we're going to get.